Hey folks, this is Ray at Rainmaker.com here, and today we get your first hands-on ride with Zwift's new steering functionality. I guess it's like their second steering functionality for racing and riding, along with the new Elite Sterzo Smart. Now before we get into it, a couple quick things. One, no, you can't crash your bike. No, you can't crash someone else's bike, and no, you can't get off-road. So why bother? Well, now you can go and cut the inside line on turns, basically cutting off the pack. You can choose who to draft off of. You can choose to keep people from drafting off of you if you want. There's a lot of really interesting potential flexibility that could be used in team dynamics down the road, but we'll get to that in just a moment. But first, the hardware. If you remember from the past, you had a phone on your handlebars for the repack ridge, the mountain bike course thing that kind of sort of worked, but wasn't awesome. With this one here, you need dedicated hardware. In this case, the Sterzo Smart is the first piece of hardware in the lineup from Elite, but there'll probably be other companies down the road, and there'll also probably be integrations with smart bikes and things like that. Pricing is on the screen right now, and inside the box you'll find the Sterzo Smart 3 AAA batteries lasting about 500 hours and a paper manual. The only thing you'll need to know in the manual is which way to point the pizza wedge, which is this way right here. But don't worry, if you point it the wrong way, you'll just go the wrong direction, so you'll figure it out in like 5 seconds flat. Now remember, this is the same Sterzo as before physically. The only difference, of course, is inside the Sterzo Smart there's a bunch of electronics, where in the past with the original Sterzo there wasn't. So you still have the same left and right steering functionality in both of them, but this one has electronics that connects to Zwift. Once inserted, you'll see a small LED status light that indicates it's on and paired. It'll pair over Bluetooth Smart and AMP Plus, though right now Zwift is only leveraging Bluetooth Smart. They say later in the year they'll probably enable AMP Plus, but for now they wanted to focus on Bluetooth Smart because it's available on all their platforms. So with the placed on the ground here, we'll dive into Zwift. You'll go ahead and you'll wake it up by just simply wiggling your wheel, pretty straightforward. At that point, you'll see in a new Zwift steering pairing menu. That menu allows you to choose a steering device, just like you would choose a trainer or a heart rate strap. And then once it's paired, you see a little steering icon on the left-hand side, and that'll show you the angle that the steering device is at in positive or negative degrees. So basically whether it's left or right, up to about 36 degrees. The Sterzo Smart supports angular precision of 1/10 of 1 degree, so plenty of precision there for steering exactly where you want it, but not too much that it's overbearing, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Next, load up any part of Zwift you want, whether it be free riding, a race, a group riding, you name it. Though somewhat ironically, you can't use the mountain bike steering course with the Sterzo Smart. Zwift says that's coming in a couple months here, but for now this is just everywhere but the steering course you can use the steering device. Don't worry, it kind of makes sense. In any case, I went and selected a race for last night, got in the starting corral, warmed up, and then ready to go. At first, if you don't steer, you might not notice the difference. Your avatar will basically remain in the center of the road, which is where the rest of the group is. But once you start steering, you'll find that your digital cyclist will glide to the left or the right edge of the road. Like with bumper bowling, you can't escape the road. You can't cross the center line, you can't go off into the bushes, and you can't crash onto the sidewalk. You also can't crash into people, nor can you go through them, which is a really interesting point. So if you want to go from the left-hand side of the road to the right-hand side of the road, and there's a pack in between you of cyclists, you have to find a gap and then go through that gap. If you just try to go through the entire cyclist, it's just like hitting a wall. You just kind of stay there and stay put. Now, if you remember back to the mountain bike course, when you steered left and right using the handlebar phone configuration thing there, that meant that when you steered to the right or the left, it would stay there until you forcibly steered back. But with the Sterzo, it automatically centers. So I let go of it and it centers back. I go this way and it centers back. And when you're on your bike, you're pressing down onto this here so it keeps that platform perfectly still. Also, it's a little bit better if you have a mat or something like that versus this horrible tile floor that I'm just working with for right now. Speaking of right now, if you're finding this video interesting, simply whack that like button at the bottom there. It really helps out this video and the channel quite a bit. Now, the real magic with this whole thing comes from taking turns, in particular taking turns with groups of people. And this is when I had my moment of, holy crap, this is impressive. It was about 3 or 4 turns in the race when I went ahead and I just simply cut into the inside corner of a 90-degree turn. And at that point, I went past the entire group in just no problems at all. No major surges of power or anything like that. Just simply glided past the whole group on the inside turn, and then I center myself out back to the middle of the road again. Now you're probably asking yourself, is that fair? Yeah, we'll get to that in just a second. The other aspect this is interesting on is drafting. Now, of course, with regular Zwift, you go ahead and you simply pedal and it falls into the draft line automatically. But with this, you have to find who you want to draft behind. In fact, as you start using this for the very first time, it'll remind you that the draft behind a cyclist is most powerful directly behind the cyclist versus off to the left and the right. And so if you're off to the left and right of a cyclist, you won't get the full draft effect with steering, whereas in regular Zwift, it'll automatically take care of that for you. Now, this becomes even more interesting if you invert it, in the sense that if I go ahead and remove myself from the draft line, no one else can get to me unless they've got a steering device. So I can go ahead and do a sprint, get myself off the side, and someone can't follow behind me and draft behind me. That becomes more interesting, of course, once you have lots of people with Sterzos out there, where you can have entire races that are Sterzo only, and in turn have all sorts of super practical and interesting race dynamics similar to outdoors, where a group of people, perhaps using Discord or something else, can go ahead and group together, attack off to the left or attack off to the right, and have small draft packs that others might not be able to follow so easily. There's a ton of scenarios here that people could think up that will be interesting to see over the coming weeks as these start becoming more and more widely available. Zwift says they are shipping these essentially today, so this won't take long to find out. The bigger question though is this fair? Not whether or not you can buy one of these, but is it fair to have people racing with and without Sterzos in the same race? And Zwift says probably not, but they're not going to stop you quite yet. They're going to see how things go over the next little while and then make a decision from there. They say that long term they'll probably will be steering only races, because you do have an advantage in most cases having a steering device versus not. And also keep in mind, this feature is part of Zwift's FutureWorks program, which means that it's kind of an open beta sort of thing, though no features have actually exited FutureWorks to my knowledge at this point. But still, it's like they're open beta, and eventually it becomes graduated to full-blown product functionality, which doesn't mean you'll be required to have a Sterzo Smart. There'll be plenty of parts of Zwift that won't require this, and probably the vast majority of Zwift won't require this. It's just another accessory that you can add to your arsenal to get a more realistic experience. Just like, for example, Wahoo Kicker Climb to go up and down. There's lots of other things out there that kind of fall in that same bucket. Now you may be wondering, what happens when you don't steer? Well, essentially you maintain the same position on the road. So if you were on the left-hand side of the road, you'll stay on the left-hand side of the road, even if the road turns right. And if you're on the right-hand side of the road, you stay on the right-hand side of the road, and the center of the road, the center of the road. Which gets to an interesting disadvantage of this. If you're going ahead and you stay on the left-hand side of the road and the road turns right, that means you're going to go a longer route. It also means you'll probably be out of the draft, which means you'll get dropped pretty darn quickly. So it's not like an easy button here. You still have to actually pay attention. In fact, arguably way more than previously, because any turn you're going to quickly end up out of the draft pack and where the rest of the group is not. Ultimately, this is way better than I expected. I kind of expected this to suck. I know I was excited about the concept of steering, and I've been excited about it for a year since Zwift announced the mountain bike side, and since Elite kind of announced these stuff sort of quietly last year at Eurobike. But I sort of expected this to be like mostly horrible. And I was pleasantly surprised. I think it's like fine for regular riding, but in racing, this is absolutely a massive game changer. Like if you're a big Zwift racer, I would expect that you should be ordering these right now, because pretty quickly you're going to be at a disadvantage, at least until Zwift segregates out people between steering devices and non-steering devices. And even then, I think it's super compelling. It's surprisingly interesting. I was, again, surprised that it didn't suck. And of course, this won't be for everyone. There'll be lots of people that just want to put, their power into the pedals and go off and ride, and that's totally cool, and Zwift says that's totally cool, and you can keep on doing that, and all is grand there. But for people that want a little bit more realism in their world, this could be it. Anyways, hope you found this interesting. If so, go ahead and whack that like button there, or hit the subscribe button for plenty more sports technology goodness. This is traditionally the time of Eurobike, and while there's no Eurobike this time of year this year, there is plenty of interesting indoor stuff coming up, as evidenced by this video right now. With that, have a good one.